after the fact. My email is on the town's website as well. So hopefully that, can garner any public attention if need be. Like I said previously in our last meeting, public meetings for this sort of thing don't often garner a lot of attention, which I mean is good. That means that Longmeadow hasn't, or Bolton hasn't suffered a, you know, large catastrophe in the past couple of years in people's memory. So, the goal of this is to keep it that way. But it's always good to know at least that our committee members are here today. Let me share my screen. Our committee members know that I shared this PowerPoint with them last time. Zoom has changed its settings. That's very exciting for everybody. So I'll run through it again this time just so that we have it on recording if that wants to be uploaded anywhere or anything of that nature. Suppose I should also introduce myself. My name is Emily, and I am representing Beta Group, who's helping the town go through with this hazard mitigation plan update, which occurs every 5 years. This is something that the town knew was coming and will come again in the next 5 years. So they're doing a great job keeping on task with that update. And hazard mitigation is really a mix of resilience and preparedness. It's any sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from specifically natural hazards. So we're not going to be talking about things like an epidemic here or COVID pandemic, but we are talking about high winds, flooding, potential dam failure, hurricanes, winter storms, wildfires, things of that nature. A lot of the benefits of hazard mitigation come to the town in the form of funding. So in order to receive funding for hazard mitigation related projects, a town needs to have an updated hazard mitigation plan that's approved through the state and federal emergency management agencies. We're really just hoping that having this plan ready and having projects in mind can help the town gain funding for those specific projects. And that's why it's really, really helpful. It's also helpful for keeping people and property safe in the case of a natural hazard event. And a lot of this, like what we're doing today, has to do with outreach and coordination. It's mandated through the Federal Emergency Management Agency that any hazard mitigation plan gets input of the public. So both along with public meetings, we also will submit the draft out for a 30-day public review once it is complete. And then, of course, go through the rest of the process to receive that approval from MEMA and FEMA, and then also local adoption of the plan itself. So like I said, hazard mitigation really is incorporating, response recovery and preparedness. It really mixes those things in together so that we're both prepared for future natural hazards and the response to that, but we're also hopefully preventing damage that may occur from those things were they to occur. The difference between hazard mitigation and preparedness, though they often intersect, is hazard mitigation has much more to do with those long-term changes you can make in planning and zoning laws, in preservation of open space, whereas preparedness might deal with the actual operation of evacuation plans and emergency shelters, communicating through radio, whereas hazard mitigation may be ensuring that a town has proper communications equipment. So oftentimes those two sort of things intersect with one another. Within the hazard mitigation planning process, we have 4 steps that we complete with every hazard mitigation plan. First is the risk assessment. That's sort of the stage we're in right now. We're going to be moving into establishing goals today as we review our previous goals from the previous plan. And then we're going to identify projects and actions. That's not a today's problem. That's a next meeting's problem, but it's always good to be thinking about potential actions that we can take in 2024 until the next plan, the next iteration of the plan that can help with hazard mitigation in town. And then, of course, we have to prepare how to update and maintain the plan as we go, which is really, honestly, part of the entire thing. That's why we're doing this here today. Within the risk assessment, we identify hazards that may impact the town. But then we also identify the town's capabilities. What are the strengths that the town has already implemented and is implementing in its planning processes and in its DPW processes that are already helping to enhance hazard mitigation. We also conduct a vulnerability analysis, so who and what populations and where is particularly vulnerable to the natural hazards that we discuss. And within that vulnerability analysis, we include the critical facilities in town. Critical facilities are sort of the buildings and infrastructure in town that help the town operate as normal. So thinking schools, town owned buildings, sewer systems, things of that nature. And we want to make sure that if they're intersecting with any of the paths of natural hazards that we've identified, that we're noting that and making sure that those are ready for any sort of interference they might have from natural hazards. I said the word natural hazards a couple times, and this is any event or physical condition. So sometimes we talk about extreme heat or extreme cold, which may not necessarily be one event, but I imagine we're living through an extreme heat event right now, just judging by how sweaty I am just through my day-to-day life, that has the potential to cause fatalities, to be dangerous to populations, to property, to open space, things of that nature. So, if you're spending prolonged periods of time outside today, making sure you're staying hydrated, making sure you're looking out for any warnings or signs of heat stroke, things of that nature. Now, in our previous committee meeting, which we've had, we identified the hazards of concern or areas of concern, areas, not really what I wanted to say there, but the hazards of concern that we're going to be focusing on in Bolton. And you'll see that they sort of break off into different sort of sections. So we have our flood related, wind related, winter storm related, geologic hazards, which aren't necessarily impacted by climate change at all. So earthquakes, fire related, and then sort of other. They sort of fit in with maybe the flood related or the geologic, but it's easier to categorize them all three as one. And so these are the hazards of concern that we'll be focusing on in this plan. I mentioned climate change and how earthquakes don't necessarily conform with maybe the changes we'll be seeing in the rest of these hazards through climate change. And climate change is a huge part of hazard mitigation, especially in Massachusetts. Massachusetts was sort of at the forefront of incorporating climate change and resilience into its state hazard mitigation plan. And they've continued that throughout, and so have made that sort of a real focus of local hazard mitigation plans as well. Is we can think of how we see these natural hazards as they exist today, but how are they going to change and how are the impacts of those hazards going to change as we see the impacts of climate change in the future? How are storms going to change? Will they become more violent, more frequent? We're going to see more flooding, more drought, all of the above. And so we want to make sure that we're incorporating the long term into these hazard mitigation plans so that they're both easier to update in the future and easier to implement as well. So this is taken directly from the state hazard mitigation plan, but these are some of the changes that we're going to be seeing in Massachusetts potentially and sort of are already seeing when it pertains to climate change and natural hazards. So an increase in annual precipitation, but also an increase in consecutive dry days. Summer and fall precipitation could decrease. There's a lot of sort of a balancing act going on here of drought versus precipitation and what that means for flooding. If we're going through a period of drought and then receive a large amount of rain within a short period of time, that's definitely going to increase damages and the potential for flooding in town. We're also going to see an increase in days of the year with a maximum temperature over 90 degrees. We're living in it, and we're definitely feeling the effects of that now. And we're also going to see an increase in magnitude and frequency of extreme weather events. So we're talking hurricanes, which we've already seen with Beryl already this year. Luckily, we're not in the path of that, but we can expect to see more hurricanes, severe sort of winter storms, nor'easters, things of that nature into the future, and the potential for tornadoes, which is something that I think a lot of us have never really thought about in Massachusetts, but there have been several that have occurred in the past several years, and that will only continue to increase. Within that risk assessment as well, like I said, we try and inventory the assets and critical facilities of the town. What is at risk? What of the building stock? What of the population? The natural environment? Where are your police, fire, and emergency services? And what other sort of critical facilities or services are essential to life in Bolton? So we've done that here. Obviously, the map you see here is very small, but you can, if you look very closely, you can see we've identified areas like the police station, any areas where there may be emergency response, as well as any schools and places of worship, which may be gathering places in the case of an emergency. We also, in the risk assessment, sort of take a dive into the town's existing mitigation capabilities. What is the town already doing? What have they done? What's in their zoning ordinance that is really hitting on those ideals of hazard mitigation? Do they have updated bylaws? You know, is their stormwater management bylaw up to date with state guidelines? Do they have a municipal plan for vulnerability, municipal vulnerability preparedness plan? What is their capital improvement process like? And so we look through all these things as well to make sure that we're both balancing, you know, what is the damage that could occur in a natural hazard, but what does the town have at its disposal and what are its strengths for responding to these hazards? So now I'm going to move on into sort of our cooperative portion of this meeting, which is talking about establishing goals. I have a list here of the 2018 plan goals, and I'll actually head over to, I want to make sure, can you folks see this Word document that I have up?
Yes.
Yay. Okay.
Excuse me, no, not a
Oh,
Word document, it's a PowerPoint.
It's a
well
PowerPoint.
then, new share. Let's try again. Here we go. Let me know if you can see
Yes, now it's a Word
Yay.
document.
It says the same thing as the the PowerPoint, but this is an interactive version for our own purposes today. So the 2018 plan for Bolton had 9 goals, which is great. You know, sometimes we see plans with 1 goal, which incorporates all of the things you're saying in goal 9. Sometimes we see plans with 10, 5 goals. I think 9 is a good number here. And I want to go through these with you folks on the committee and anyone else who may be watching and talk about if any of these goals have changed, if there are any updates we want to make, or if we want to make any updates that include mentioning climate change, things of that nature. So I'm going to go through them one by one and get a little, you know, overview. Stop me at any time if you think a change needs to be made. But yeah, before this meeting, I read through these, and I think you're pretty much all set. You know, a lot of the goals for hazard mitigation plans say the same thing, and that's fine. That's good. That's what we want them to say. But it may be good. We might be able to finagle some of the wording around in here to add some climate change in, just, you know, for fun and because we have to. So the first goal here from 2018 was to prevent and reduce the loss of life, injury, public health impacts, and property damages resulting from all major natural hazards. That one makes sense to me. I'll say it. I think that's an important one to have because that really is the #1 goal of this plan, I think. Goal 2 is to identify and seek funding for measures to mitigate or eliminate each known significant flood hazard area. So this is sort of specifying into flooding specifically. You'll see that a lot of the plan focuses on flooding because it does often cause the most damage and can occur as a result of many of the other hazards we have on our list. So, you know, the damage you may have from hurricanes may actually also be considered flooding damage or wind damage, just depending on how you categorize it. But okay, I think that's a good one as well. Goal 3 is to integrate hazard mitigation planning as an integral factor in all relevant municipal departments, committees, and boards. That's also a pretty standard one, I think. Goal 4 is to prevent and reduce the damage to public infrastructure resulting from all hazards. We're differing a little bit from goal 1. Goal 1 is really, you know, loss of life, injury, public health versus public infrastructure. If anything, I'd say you could combine the two if you're feeling passionate about, you know, either argument here, but I think it's also okay as is. So it's really dependent on how
I think
you like to do your goals.
Personally, I think it's fine the way it is. I think it's fine the way it is.
Yeah, I really don't think much change needs to be made here.
I would agree
Goal,
with that.
yeah, okay. Goal 5 is to encourage the business community, major institutions, and nonprofits to work with the town to develop, review, and implement the hazard mitigation plan. And so that's, the point of today is both to have public input, but also in the future, and when we release the draft plan, we definitely want to make it a priority to send this out to any major institutions. If there's a strong voice from the business community that we want to send this out to, so they can make sure that they also have their input heard in this plan. And so that not all of the responsibility falls on the town, because some things are out of the town's control, especially if there's like a privately owned dam, things of that nature. Goal 6, similar to Goal 5, work with surrounding communities, state, regional, and federal agencies to ensure regional cooperation and solutions for hazards affecting multiple communities. I think that sounds good. I think that's a nice one. Encouraging working together. Goal 7 is ensure that future development meets federal, state, and local standards for preventing and reducing the impacts of natural hazards. You're already doing that, so I'd say let's keep that in there to keep it up. Goal 8 is take maximum advantage of resources from FEMA and MEMA to educate town staff and the public about hazard mitigation. This is, I think, out of all of them, the most different goal I've seen from the other towns I worked with. And I really like this. I think it's a nice to put an emphasis on educating town staff in our goals, but also educating the public about hazard mitigation, because hazard mitigation is sort of a cloudy word in the grand scheme of everyone's everyday life. You can maybe sort of understand what it means, but I think it's really helpful to have those public education related actions. And that's something we'll talk about when we get into action creation. So I think it would be nice to have this goal so that we can relate it directly to the actions once we create them. And I think it looks good for Bolton to have this for funding purposes as well. And then goal 9 is consider the potential impacts of future climate change and incorporate climate sustainability and resiliency into hazard mitigation planning. So goal 9, I think, I'm wondering if in the plan before the 2018 plan, if it was 8 goals and they added goal 9. But I think that is a really great goal. And because you have that, I don't think you necessarily need to add climate change into any of the other actions. Looking at these goals, do you find that there's anything glaringly missing that you want this plan to do?
I don't think so. I think regarding the hazard mitigation lens that we're dealing with, I think we could tie in, and what comes to mind is some of the components that we incorporated or discovered through the MVP action grants and those related projects. But I think for this particular lens and scope, I think these are all appropriate and also are written in a way that leave room to be able to incorporate that.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement here. I think sometimes writing plans, you get sort of caught up in goals versus policies versus actions, and always remembering that goals are sort of the broadest. And we really want, when we get to writing actions, what we really want to do is make sure that they reflect these goals. But I think overall that, yeah, the MVP projects can definitely fit in with these goals when we're talking about flood hazard area, we're talking about climate change. Uh, so, yes. All right. Well, exercise number 1, which was much more of a review than an exercise, maybe. We're going to keep them as is, which I think is a great plan because they work. And if it ain't broke, maybe update it, but you don't have to fix it at least. So in the next phase of mitigation planning. After we've identified all the hazards, we've identified the strengths that the town has, we've identified the goals of this project, which I think is an interesting identifying goals after you've identified hazards. I think is an interesting place to identify goals in a plan. But it's how we do it. We're next going to work on identifying projects and actions and strategies. So a mitigation strategy is really a blueprint for reducing loss. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking to do, is to reduce loss in the case of a natural hazard event. We're looking at what strategies have been previously implemented, and then we're looking based on that and based on the risks that we've identified, what are new strategies that we should pursue. And within those actions, we break them down into different categories: planning and prevention, property protection, natural resource protection, structural projects, emergency services, and what I was mentioning for, I think it was goal number 8, public education and awareness. Having actions within each of these categories, but also addressing each of the natural hazards that we identified, make it so this hazard mitigation plan is really a comprehensive plan that's trying to get at each portion of how the town operates and make sure that everyone is sort of on the same page when it comes to identifying and carrying through these mitigation actions. Someone may ask, why are you looking at all these culverts in town when you could be doing something different? And you might say, well, let's talk about hazard mitigation for a second. If we're talking about increased quantities of precipitation and our culverts can't handle that, this is actually something that's going to be really, really helpful in protecting your property in the future. And so that sort of incorporates, property protection, it's a structural project, and you're educating the public on why this is important. When we identify these mitigation actions, we're looking through all those previous plans, and we're also looking at what is possible in the capabilities of the town. So that's why we're still looking at regulations. We're looking at the open space and recreation plan. We're looking at MVP, things that have already done. And then we create an action from that.
Emily, I think Rebecca can correct it, but the wetland regulations, I think, were updated in 2024.
Oh,
Well, so yes, they have been just recently updated. However, we have not gotten them back from the AG's office. But they were certainly voted at town meeting in 2024, so that is correct. And
I'll update that.
on that note as well, we just completed our draft for the open space and recreation plan, so that can also be updated for 2024, as we hope to be submitting that by the end of this month once we finalize.
Amazing. That's great. I just wrote 2023 as if it was still 2023, so that was a little worrying.
Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'd love to see the draft of that once that is out to the public. I'll take a look at that as well. That's really good to know.
In that same vein, the master plan was just completed.
You can tell that since the last time that we 2024. Wow.
We
This
completed
is a big year for Bolton.
and the outlook is until 2035.
All right.
And in addition to that, Emily, I don't know if the master plan is available, but the open space and recreation plan draft document is available on the town website. So you just mentioned you wanted to take a look at that. That is accessible through that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. I will take a look at it. And I'll take a look at the old one too, because I think I have the old one. So always good to take a look at both to see what changes have been made over time. That was a great update for this slide. Everything is so up to date now. So 2024 is a big year for Bolton and all of their planning. So it's good to see that everything is getting done. It said it's going to get done. We can add this to the list soon as well. So I'm gonna look at all these things, especially now that I've gotten updates. And once we've gone through all the actions that might relate to hazard mitigation, we try and incorporate those things into our action plans. So at the bottom, you'll see this table here. And this is really what we're identifying when we're identifying our mitigation strategies. We're adding a description, so what is the action? And then we're making sure that we have who should be in charge or supporting the charge of implementing these actions. We're proposing a time frame so that we keep in mind within the lens of the project 5 years, we can sort of sort out, is this a long-term thing or is this something that we can implement right away? We're of course looking at estimated costs, and we're going to definitely specify the costs down to the grant, so that we can, name drop some of the grants in there that projects may be eligible for. And that has to do with potential funding sources. So we both want to identify the costs and the funding sources. When we're identifying these actions and creating these actions, we want to make sure that they're feasible, both, within the realm of funding, but also within the realm of personnel. When we're identifying the lead and supporting implementing parties, if it's a consultant, it's a consultant. If it's in the charge of the DPW and the DPW has the capacity, then we're going to put that there. So we try and make sure that we're seeing this from every side and making sure that each action is actually something that can be done and isn't sort of, our goals may be lofty, but our actions certainly will be achievable. And then, like I said, we got to go through the update and maintenance of the plan, but we're not even considering that now. What we are considering, as I switch my share, oh, thank you, Randy, for the link there, is beginning the ideation phase of our actions by reviewing the actions from the previous plan. So we're really not thinking of anything new here. What we're going to do instead is take a look. I know this is sort of an awkward page to start on, but I promise it makes more sense as we scroll down here. Is take a look at the actions from the previous plan and get an update as to where they are in progress, describing, what percent of this was completed, why was a project not completed if it wasn't, or is this project done and was there any additional work done? And we're going to identify, is this something that the town still wants to focus on in this plan? Or is it something that's either no longer a problem or no longer a priority? And then we're going to describe the next step. So, if we decide that something is no longer a priority, we might just say, we're going to discontinue this action. If it's something that we want to incorporate into this plan, we might say continue, but reword to say, something more specific, or identify a more specific area that an action needs to focus on. So the previous plan, you'll note that I have titles. That's not the word I'm looking for. Sections for each of these actions. So we have our dam related, and these are taken directly from the 2018 plan, flood related hazards. These are how they were organized previously, fire related. And we are going to go through and describe their status. I'll also note for members of the committee that I will upload this to the Google Drive after we've done a quick glance through today, just so we can get any more input from members of the committee who may not be here today, to make sure that we can get all the information that we need for these actions. Does anyone have any questions on where we're at, on what's happening? It's a lot of information thrown together, but I promise.
No, I think we just start going down the list, I think.
Let's do it. All
Yeah.
right. Number 1, Century Mill Dam assessment. Conduct a physical assessment and conclusive research about ownership and legal responsibility for any needed repairs. Sorry that this is a 2-lane action here. There we go. And this DPW was named as the responsible party. So
Yeah, I don't know. That goes back to my predecessor. I'm not, there's been no progress. I do recall seeing some paperwork somewhere about, started doing some research, and it was looking like it was a private structure.
I think you're right. Yeah.
An extremely low hazard too, so it's not
Yeah.
high on the priority list.
Okay. It seems like this is a pretty, I don't want to say low-hanging fruit, but this is a good action that's related to dams. And you'll see the second action here is also for Century Mill Dam about the repairs following assessment, coordinate any needed repairs by dam owner, responsible party, private. I would
leave that there, but I'm having a little bit of, given our financial constraints, time constraints and otherwise, I'm not sure we should be spending a lot of time trying to figure out the research on an extremely low hazard.
Yeah. My suggestion would be to combine them,
Yeah,
and reword to put a little less emphasis on, sorry, I'm just moving my stool here, on the town's responsibility here, since it is a
Yeah.
private dam.
I
We're
think
lucky that it's not high
makes a lot of
hazard.
sense. And, I mentioned I've seen paperwork, but if I had to go put my hands on it, I'm not sure I could come up with it. So,
That's
I just have a recollection of seeing it. I'm not even sure where I remember seeing it, but
okay. So
Um,
I'm gonna say yes, let's include it. But to carry it forward, combine with other dam action and reword. um, Yeah, I mean, I've dealt with high hazard dams that are privately owned, and that's always difficult, to say the
yeah.
least, when it comes to
I'm not even sure this one
legality.
is, I'm not even sure it's really even
Yeah,
rated at all. It's probably,
it's either low or non-jurisdictional. I can't remember.
yeah,
Um,
does it even, I don't even know if it shows up on the inventory, state inventory list.
I think it does.
Does it? Okay.
But not enough for it to be. It's not a high hazard dam, so we don't have to take extra steps. Um, FEMA recently updated their policies regarding high hazard risk dams, and you have to talk to the dam owner. So we're lucky here that this is a low risk dam, so we don't have to hunt down the owner, have a conversation with them about the status of the dam, things of that nature. Doesn't mean that it's not important, and we should definitely still keep something about it on the list, but I think we can definitely do some reworking in our next meeting about those actions to make more sense for the town. So I'm just gonna say see above for that. Those were your only two dam related actions, which is fine. If you had 14 dams in town, I'd say maybe that wasn't fine, but you are all set.
Yep.
So let's move down to our flood related. Keep
That
this.
next one, the conduct inventory and stuff, that's about 90% complete.
Ah, okay, great. In progress, percent complete. How is that being funded? Do you know?
It's uh, asset management grant through the GEP, 60% and 40% town.
Fantastic. So once this inventory is complete, so this isn't going to be a new action. Because you're almost done.
Yeah. we should-
Randy,
we
Randy,
should-
does that include the detention ponds?
It does not. It's only, I did not include detention ponds, no, only culverts within the rights of way.
Okay.
Good clarifying question. Do we want to include, like, rework it to say maybe we pursue funding for something with detention ponds? Or,
I think if there's not um, another action that relates to it, then yes, I think it does need to be incorporated, but I think we need to double check and make sure it's not redundant.
yeah, I think that's a great
Or make
idea.
it as a separate item, do drainage infrastructure within rights of way and then drainage stuff, other, within subdivisions and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
separate the two distinctly. Cause I mean, my focus was on the rights of way because we didn't know, didn't even have a good idea, didn't have a list of where they were and what the conditions were.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Oh, that is how you spell the word repetitive. Yeah, I mean, so these are all of our flood related actions. It seems like these bottom three here are about very specific areas. So we're talking specifically about Spectacle Hill Road, Golden Run, Quail Run, and then Forbush Mill.
Didn't
So
we
the,
update, I thought we updated this already, like Spec Hill Road, that's done. That's been complete.
yeah, I think I knew that. That might not have been on this sheet, but that might have been through
Yeah.
different.
Maybe events and losses or something. or-
Yeah, or maybe existing capabilities for updating me on the MVP stuff.
Mm,
Double check.
no, I thought we. Yeah, okay, we'll continue.
Definitely double check though, because I don't want to do something again that we've already
Yeah, no,
completed.
that's fine, let's go.
Okay.
I couldn't immediately put my hands on it, so.
Um,
Country drainage systems.
which one are you looking at? Oh, there we go. Yes. Good
yeah.
Lord. Yeah, I thought that was interesting wording. I'm not sure if that means rural.
I think Rebecca's the only one, Rebecca and Leslie were the only two that are around that the last time this was. Gone through, so I'm not sure. I don't know if they're meaning like
I-
open channel swales and. you
I
know,
believe that's what they mean. So, like what's along Wattaquatta Hill Road in some sections where it's like a riprap swale, same thing along Forbush. It's very, I don't want to diminish what's there, but it's like low, heavy infrastructure.
Yeah.
That's the way I'm interpreting that.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm trying to think of wording for that I can identify, but is this so assessment of country drainage systems, have you identified areas where inundate and pool water in town?
Formally, no.
Okay. I was saying it might have been done a little bit with MVP stuff and with
No,
this action
the
here.
drainage infrastructure was strictly pipes.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's say not complete. That's okay. Not everything has to be complete. Indicate what obstacles and delays were encountered. Funding.
I'd say probably funding, manpower.
Funding and manpower would, change of personnel. I mean, I've never,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had turnover and management too, so.
Hmm.
I think, Randy, my other question with that is there some sort of documentation system that you use when the crew is working out on and maintaining these systems that document whether or not it's pooling or is there any coordination with public safety like fire and police where if they get a call about an area flooding, is this something we document or no? I'm just thinking of like another hurdle would be if we have a drought year, we're not going to be able to document the inundation properly.
All we track currently is, if there's a report of flooding or whatever, and there's a work order associated with that, those are the only types of things we record. We're not currently recording maintenance of swales, because we're not doing any because we don't have the manpower to do that.
Okay. I was just curious.
Stuff like that. I mean, it's primarily, drainage concerns or flooding and stuff like that.
These are my notes, but also in this column. I will say that the other option for these actions is we say that they're included as an ongoing capability. Like they've turned into something that the town just does. It doesn't quite sound like the town is doing exactly this action. Do we think this is something? I mean,
We do
maybe,
not have a roadside swale management
right.
maintenance program right now. We mow them, we will mow the roadsides. That's pretty much the extent of it. We have, for many, many years, we used sand for anti-icing, and that's created real challenges with the swales and stuff. So,
Yeah.
very slowly trying to address some of them, but I can't say we've made any real progress.
Okay. And that is not something to be ashamed of as well. I feel like sometimes going through these old actions, you're like, oh God, we didn't do that. We should have done that. Not the case. That's why we're here today, is to, make sure these are still things that are relevant, and things that maybe we could get some funding for or manpower for. So I'm thinking there's got to be some way to incorporate these into a new, similar to combining the two dam actions. Ha ha ha. Combining these
Personally,
two.
personally, I'd like to keep them separate because
Okay.
our inventory is only going to be for hard infrastructure,
Okay.
not swales.
Okay,
Things
great.
of that nature. So personally, I think I'd rather have them separate.
That's why you're here, and that's why you're telling me that. So that's good. Um, do you want to specify anything on either of these? Like, are there any specific areas that need any focus, or do you
I'm going to
agree with
wait
the wording
until
as is?
the assessment is complete and they've come up with a priority uh, capital replacement list.
Okay, so maybe we add something about, um, when the priority list.
And that should be by the end of the year.
Great.
We should have that. I think they're working on it now, so it may even be within a few months.
Yeah, okay, so I can't see my final. Jeez. Um, so the conduct inventory of all drainage infrastructure, that's going to change. I mean, because you're already doing that, we're going to sort of update the wording to that to really include that maintenance and priority list. Since that's
Now,
happening.
just a question, we did not inventory catch basins at this point.
Okay.
So I mean, that may be a future mapping of catch basins would be a future project. But again, it's a function of manpower to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And then, so moving down to our assessment of country drainage systems, identify areas which inundate and pool water frequently. I feel like there might be a way to specify this, like Rebecca was talking about earlier, with the work orders that you're already recording. So I'm trying to think. I feel like the town is doing
The
this.
reports would be very similar to what I sent you about tree calls.
Yeah.
It would be very the same type of issue. Let me just I can give you an indication. Continue and I'll try and print a report to see
Okay.
what kind of responses or what kind of calls we've gotten for a flood.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's sort of an ongoing capability, but also an action that could be improved. So maybe we come back to that one once we've gone through the rest of these, to see if we can rework that, just wording wise, to be more specific to the town's needs. So Spectacle Hill is complete. Has that fixed flooding in that area or in that drainage area? I know Randy's in the middle of doing something else,
I'm
so
sorry, what? Yeah,
No.
yeah, that's fixed it.
Yay, fixed it. Um, Conduct drainage updates to area of Golden Run and Quail Run. Not sure if that's been complete.
That has not been completed.
Completed. Frightening sometimes. And the same with Forbush Mill.
That's in progress. Yeah, you could put in progress.
Yeah, I
We've
would
got
say that's in progress.
a bridge. We got another one under design. We've got
So the drainage updates for Golden Run and Quail Run. I'm going to assume it's for the same reasons that every town faces, which is the funding and the manpower, that it has not been completed, unless it's an area that is no longer a priority, just in
No, it's
general.
definitely a priority. We had like,
Okay.
12-inch thick ice over the winter.
Oh,
It's definitely a priority. It's just, um, you know, besides funding manpower, I think permitting may be a challenge as well.
oh, fun. So that's, I mean, that's one we'll include. We love a project that directly names an area, because then you can point to it directly when requesting funding for that project.
So back to the other one,
Yeah.
since November of 2021, there's been 30 calls related to drainage type or flooding issues.
Okay.
So it's not a significant, no, it's not insignificant, but it's not huge either.
Yeah, I get it. Um, yeah, I mean, since we haven't yet inventoried catch basins, and then we also want to inventory areas with, I don't want to say informal drainage system, because Rebecca, what you're talking about is still a formal drainage system in place, but it's just not heavy drainage system. Um, do we think maybe we can incorporate the catch basin inventory with inundation inventory? They're still kind of separate.
No, I
Yeah,
think we
if I was going to combine it with one, I would combine it with conduct inventory of all drainage infrastructure in town.
Hmm.
Um, and keep it on that item because I think that's more referring to like the hard infrastructure versus country drainage, which I think is more less structured, less formal drainage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I would keep both of these actions. I think they're both important. Um, and 30 calls, and we have sort of an informal list of areas of inundation and pooling water because of that uh call log. So it might be identify areas with inundation and pool water frequently. I'm going to reword that sentence. Um,
Yeah, those areas primarily are from my experience, my observations is where we have ineffective leaching catch basins.
okay.
So that's my experience where we've had those issues. Even Golden Run, we've got a couple of leaching catch basins there that they just can't, when the groundwater comes up, they become ineffective.
Hmm. So I'm thinking along the lines of assessment, also saying maybe just formalizing that list into locations. Um, so that you have something to start on. Um, and like a list to build off of. Do you know what I mean?
Not really,
Okay.
not really, because I mean, yeah, not really.
So
I mean,
you,
I was going back to the areas, the one before that where, or the assessment of country drainage where inundated, pool function frequently. That is where I've noted, the leaching catch basins are ineffective. And
mhm.
as an example, I said Golden Run.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm positive that, doing anything with the leaching catch basins on Golden Run is going to solve our issue.
That's good.
It's
Yeah,
going to have to
that's good to
be
know.
some kind of pipe system to someplace.
Yeah, I think so I was just writing because you mentioned Golden Run. I was just writing that one on that
Yeah.
action that
Well,
mentions Golden
I
Run.
just don't want it to be, that was as an example.
Yeah,
I can think of others. There's Still River Road. There's Liberty Circle. There's quite a few that are like that. South Bolton Road, where we have
yeah. So I think definitely keeping this action with the caveat that DPW is sort of already doing this with responding to calls through work orders. Like you're sort of already identifying areas of inundation and where water pools. But having a formal assessment of those areas could help to identify more projects that might need funding. So I think including this in 2024, and I don't think that this is going to be repetitive. I think we're definitely going to include both of these actions. Spectacle Hill, we don't need to include in 2024 because it's done. Golden Run and Quail Run, we can continue that and include that in 2024 actions. Just noting, that it's not completed, but it's still an area of concern. For Forbush Mill Road, since this is already in progress, do you foresee additional projects being needed in this specific area?
Yeah, 3 more.
All right. Let's include it. Are those projects funded yet or no?
No. The design on one of them is, and that'll be the next one, and it's a total of 4 culverts on this road. And we're trying to do them in, I guess in order or something, or
Mhm.
based on condition.
All right, so we're definitely going to include that one. We're not adding any additional actions right now. We're just reviewing these ones from 2018. But I think definitely as we move forward and start thinking about actions that we want for this plan, thinking about any more areas you can name, we'll take it. We'll put it in there. Even if we're saying something like conduct drainage upgrades at areas such as, and then we're making a list, that is perfectly acceptable. So that things are, locked in for something that is an area of concern for flooding. So we're going to include, not include Spectacle Hill, but we're going to include both Golden Run, Quail Run, and Forbush Mill Road in our 2024 actions, maybe with some rewording that will happen. Let's move down into fire-related actions. Acquire equipment for the fire department to better respond to brush fires. We have fire department here.
Chief is not on, so why don't we skip that?
All right.
Maybe
skip.
send it to him separately.
Yeah. Chief. Public education. Let's talk about winter related then. The opposite of fire related. Provide additional tree maintenance program funding to mitigate both winter hazards and wind hazards.
They did increase the tree warden budget,
Okay. In
so
progress.
by what, 15,000, right, Randy? So it's 50,000 now?
It's still probably, insufficient and.
Yeah, but it was.
Tree warden is a stipend position too, and the amount of work that, that position is facing we'll never catch up.
No. And you are not the only town to have this issue.
And of
I
course,
call that in
there's
progress.
also, I shouldn't say of course, but there's also a representatives of the town, citizens who are very concerned about, removal of any trees.
Just because of like character and quality of.
Yes, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
They're sensitive to that type of issue.
Absolutely.
We have a number of roads that are scenic roads too. I think that's addressed in the master plan. Looking at, right, Pam?
That addressed in terms of that they want better regulations and finding capabilities.
Well, I think and also restrictions on or controls over, they want to maintain the forested look of the town, for lack of a better term.
Oh, yes, that part is.
Okay. Definitely something we've seen before. But we also know just from living, I think that tree damage is something that we often see from these natural hazard events. So this is still definitely an important action to have, either under winter related or wind related. I'd be more apt, it looks like it is also under wind related. I'd be more apt to put it under wind. I think that makes more sense in my mind, but I can understand that like snow load and things like that.
You don't get, I mean, it'd be more ice. Snow load doesn't typically sit on unleafed trees.
Okay.
So, you know,
I
wind.
think back to
wind
I
is
think
nice.
back to the ice storm where the Worcester County area lost power for a good week and a half, 2 weeks,
Yeah.
because of downed limbs and wires.
Although the pines would obviously be impacted by snow and ice and stuff.
But yeah, ice is definitely our number one in that
Right.
category.
Yep.
That's good to know.
And that happened in 2008 when we had that severe ice storm. A lot of trees went down due to the ice.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that in there. Whoa. Typing hard.
Yeah, I guess rural character is better term than forested look. Maintain the rural character of the town.
Yeah, that's probably true. Or care
I think the
quantum.
goal is to limit land clearing as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand that that's something that I think a lot of people value.
But I mean, even again, I think addressing the hazard trees in town is still a monumental task for the tree
Oh.
ward.
God, yeah. So here's my first question is well, actually, no, that's not my question. I was gonna say, do we want to include it under winter related or wind related? I think at the end of the day, generally, instead of organizing by relation, I have a column that tells you
How many items are listed under winter related?
winter is just 2
Just
currently.
why not just go winter related and wind related, combine it as one category?
I fully agree. I think we don't need, I'm actually gonna not include, since we have a repetitive one for wind related. What I'm gonna say is we're gonna include this one for winter and wind. Because it's impacted, or winter wind, that works too. It's impacted by both.
Believe it or not, we get a lot of calls year round because, I mean, there's a lot of power interruptions related strictly to branches.
Oh yeah. Well,
trees.
even like recent thunderstorms and stuff as well.
Well, we've had sunny days and all of a sudden a tree will fall down.
Right.
Yeah.
I will say maybe let's think about the wording here.
So under the title winter related in white there, maybe put winter related and wind related.
Fine by me.
And then call it quits. Let's get to the next one. How
Okay.
long can our Zoom meetings go, Rebecca?
Oh, that's a great question.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes.
They can go for probably another half hour.
Okay.
Great.
Yep. Well, no, we're not almost there. Let's move on. Assess municipal and school building roofs for snow load capacity and vulnerability.
No progress.
That's fine. This seems to be a popular, this was a popular one in the previous iteration of plans.
Is that something we'd want to bring Rob in on, Randy? Or is that DPW?
The town owns the buildings.
Okay.
The town owns we own Florence, Sawyer and Emerson.
Right,
The others are under the district. So yeah, maybe Rob at some point.
Right. I just wasn't sure if Rob maybe does some of these assessments, just,
I mean, but you know, if you think about the new high school, I'm sure is being built to new standards.
yeah, that's true too.
So, and that's under construction, so.
Is Rob our superintendent?
He's the facilities manager
So,
at the schools.
I'll shoot him an email. And then we can maybe decide in our next one if this is something we want to keep or not. Moving on to drought. So now we're in a drought, not really, but so develop public education strategy to increase awareness about drought conditions and water conservation.
I would say that's in progress, but I also feel like that's ongoing. So what we've done, some of this was part of two of our MVP program action grant projects. So within the past 4 years, this is something we've been working on. And in addition to that, I don't know if we're including some local volunteer groups, but I do know there's a couple local volunteer groups who have also been sort of spreading that message and trying to talk about water conservation. What we focused on in our last MVP action grant was looking at management of different land cover types and how to be more resilient through management, which also positively impacts the area on an ecological level, along with reducing water usage and allowing for those vegetation to survive.
It sounds like you're definitely doing that.
Yeah.
This sounds like an in-progress action for sure. Is it something that we want to improve upon and include in our next iteration of the plan, do you think? Like, is there more that needs to be done here?
I think so. I
Okay.
think there can always be a better approach to what we're doing.
Thank you, Randy. Include. And do you think it needs to be changed in any way? I feel like sometimes our public education strategy actions are broad for a reason.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with including this action sort of as is.
That's fine.
Okay, works for me. Our next one is research field management practices, which conserve water and determine under what drought conditions to reduce watering of public spaces.
Yes. Sort
Sounds
of same
like,
answer for
yeah.
what was above. We actually also worked this past year on a different MVP project specific to one of our athletic fields, and we actually submitted an action grant to fund the construction, of which one of the main goals is this, and to be using species that are a little bit more friendly for the use and the site conditions there.
Love to see it. That's a good one. Okay, great. Again, something we probably want to keep doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, I might put in drought resistant design into that action, but I think that that action is an important one that can only be improved upon as we go, but it's good to know that actions are already being taken. I think a lot of people were not thinking about drought and now really are thinking about drought. So it's good to know that Bolton is being proactive about the actions they can take. So our extreme temperature related is provide public education regarding the hazards of extreme temperatures, recommended mitigation for residents. Again, a little broad. I'm thinking that that means sort of like what I was talking about before with like knowing the signs of heat stroke.
I
Which
would agree. I also would say that it falls within what we were doing with MVP, just educating the public
Good.
too on not only the hazard, but also recommended mitigation, being like talking about where are cooling areas within the town, and then also like urban heat island effect
Mhm.
type circumstances, which we luckily don't have too many
There's all
circumstances
those
like that
trees.
because it's substantially forested, but we do have a few areas that fall under that category.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
think it's just communicating that.
Okay. So I would say that that's also sort of in progress. In progress. It's interesting with a lot of these education ones, we can't really ever say they're completed because it's an ongoing process. Is this something we'd want to continue doing? I mean,
Yes.
yeah. You're like, no, I'd be a little concerned. But and any changes or any specifications that we think need to be made here regarding hazards of extreme temperatures? I mean, unless we're thinking of a specific project, I would maybe consider adding those fun buzzwords such as cooling areas and urban heat island effect. But I think, again, with that, the broadness of public education related actions, that probably okay. So let's move on to our earthquake related. Conduct a seismic assessment for earthquake vulnerability of municipal buildings.
No progress.
Not something you're really worried about, I'd say. Hopefully, unless you know something that I don't know.
Yeah,
So
not prior, not a, on my, be honest, up until this moment, I hadn't thought of it.
right, because why would you? The only thing I'll say about this one is that we do have to include an action for each hazard.
Yeah.
So
I know
I'd
that
say
like the
keep
new
it.
building code has seismic
Yes.
requirements in it, stuff like that, but I don't know if any the more recently constructed public buildings have that built in or not. I just don't know.
And yeah. I would say, it hasn't been included because it's not a priority, not a high risk here, but also funding, manpower. Who's going to do
Yeah,
that really?
funding is a big thing. Not manpower, yeah, you can say that too.
Building inspector, I
We
guess,
don't
would.
have the technical expertise to do that.
Right.
And our building inspector is not full-time,
Okay, right.
so building inspector is a part-time position.
It would be a miracle if I could spell to save my life. Okay, there we go. So what do we think here? Do we want to include this as a like,
Well, they're requiring it to be included, so just include it.
yeah, just in case some random bit of funding comes up? Sure. Let's do it. And then we're going to go down into our multi-hazard. Acquire communications repeater for backup of fire and police departments.
So yeah, check with the chiefs.
Okay. Identify and designate sites for debris management.
I mean, I have ideas, but it's not designated now. I think it, yeah, not complete.
Yeah, that's it's not necessarily a funding issue, I'd say. It's more of a space and I mean funding as well.
I mean, it's, the biggest areas we have available for something like that, it would be, athletic fields, and that would, be, quite disruptive to a number of organizations.
So I would say, I mean, we can include this. I think something that might be helpful is to think about this as a regional action. Thinking about, instead of identifying and designating, we think about coordinating with surrounding towns. for debris management. I don't know if that's something that,
Yeah. Fine.
all right. Acquire a fixed space two-way radio system and repeater for the DPW.
Yeah, that's definitely needed with interoperability with the police and fire for sure.
Um, I'm assuming that that has not been completed for funding's sake.
That's correct.
So good, that's a good one to have a sort of multi-hazard. And then our finally action is more of a statement, I guess. Open space protection and land acquisition.
I'd say it's ongoing.
Okay. Um, yeah. I'm assuming this is the town would like to acquire open space, for land, for open space protection purposes, like for the purposes of protection.
Right.
Okay. It's occurring. Do we want to continue this, or do we want to say, this one sort of seems like a capability in my mind? Is that this is something that the town does? And
No, we'd want to continue. I think
Okay.
it'd be an ongoing goal.
are there any specific areas that are a goal currently, or?
Yeah, there's things, well, there's criteria identified in the open space update and the master plan as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say referencing the two plans is probably the easiest way to accomplish that versus listing everything else.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, great. Yeah, so that seems like a good include. I mean, what's great about this is that we already have a list of actions for this plan, basically, just by going through this sheet. And I'll check in with the fire department, the fire chief, for our specific wildfire and fire department related actions. Our other sort of mitigation accomplishments table is the final thing on this list. Obviously, we've talked about those MVP projects. Those are obviously a capability that we have already. We don't need to explain those because we have great resources on them. Are there any other mitigation actions that have occurred since 2018 that you can think of that we haven't really touched on by going through this list of items?
None that I can think of. I'm not aware of much. In addition.
I mean, that's a pretty comprehensive list that we just went through.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm still going to send this out to the committee, so keep it on your mind if you end up thinking of like, oh yeah, we did that project for that specific area in 2021. Then we can definitely include that. But this was great in getting us really started on where we want to be for developing actions as we move forward. Let me get a new share back in here. So at the end of the day, our goal is a final hazard mitigation plan with all of our previous actions listed, how they've maybe changed in the eyes of the town, and the new actions that we'll be creating. It seems, again, like we're at the very beginning of this process, but really a bulk of the process is not in our hands. So once we submit to MEMA, that's really where our work ends. And it's in the hands of our state and federal agencies. If they have comments, obviously we'll address them, but the bulk of the work will be done in step number 4 here. So I know it looks like we're very early on, but really we're right in the middle. We're right where we're supposed to be. Today was our second committee meeting in July here. And our third committee meeting will be upcoming. And I'd like to have a draft to you ideally before that meeting so we can go into our actions with the knowledge of, what we've decided for risk within the town. Once we have our third committee meeting and have identified mitigation actions for the town, then we'll be submitting this plan out for public review to get as many eyes on it as possible. Maybe we'll receive no comments, maybe we'll receive a bunch, but the ideal is we're just getting the opportunity for everybody's eyes to be on the plan once it is complete.
Do
And
you
that,
do you want to try and establish a tentative date for the third meeting?
yes, let us do so. Where is my calendar? Really is the question at the end of the day. Judging by the sort of slow pace of summer months in August, I would say early September is probably a good place to put that meeting. And I would say probably same time, same day, Tuesday at 1 p.m. Today's Tuesday, right? Yes.
At what, the 3rd or the 10th?
Sure.
Well, you're the one that has to come up with you're gonna come up with a draft. You tell
That's
us.
true. Let's say the 10th just to be just to be fair. How are we at September 10th at 1 p.m.? When's Labor Day?
The 2nd.
Okay. Yeah, then that's definitely much better.
1
That
p.m.?
works for me right now.
That does work for you? Sorry, I lost you.
Yes.
Okay, good. Anyone that it doesn't work for?
I'm good with that date.
Okay. September 10th, 1 p.m. Be there or be square. I'm adding it to my calendar so that I have it ready to go. Okay. Thank you folks for attending today. That is all I had for you on the agenda. Does anyone have any questions before we head on out?
I'm just checking one thing here, about the date. Let me, I'm
Oh,
looking,
okay.
I'm looking. I just haven't, put it in my calendar yet.
Will that meeting also be via Zoom?
Yes.
Okay.
Unless you have a burning desire to have it in person, which I think I can accommodate, but
10th, yeah, no, 10th is not good for me.
okay, well, back to the drawing board.
The
We don't, it
following,
doesn't have to be a Tuesday either. It can be any
the
day that
following,
week.
I'm potentially gonna be on vacation that whole week, so.
Ah, okay.
So
How
you
about the
wanna-
17th?
Yeah, let's just do the 17th. Is that still good for everybody, I guess?
Fine with me.
Works for me.
Hard to think that far ahead. So if it's on my calendar, then it will happen. Okay. So the 17th at 1 p.m. September 17th, not August 17th. Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. I will send a follow-up with any of the additional actions I may need from any of you, but I'll be in touch with the school facilities director as well as the fire chief to get any additional information I need. And as always, if you think of something related to the hazard mitigation plan before I get the draft out to you, send it to me. Shoot me an email and we can always discuss.
I sent you the facility director's email. I don't know if you saw it.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Brilliant. Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for your plan updates. I'm looking forward to looking into those new ones. And thank you for attending today.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.